She thought he was just another lonely, dying patient. Gray hair, frail hands, a half-eaten meal no one ever touched. But on her last night shift, while adjusting his oxygen, he whispered something that would change her life forever. What she didn't know was that man. He could buy the entire hospital 10 times over. And she was already written into his will. This is the story of a nurse who gave a little more care than her paycheck required, and how one old man turned her whole world upside down, even after death. Pay close attention. There's a brief quiz at the end asking, how many times did we say the name Sophia Warren? It's just for fun. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. Before we dive in, do us a quick favor. Drop a comment, hit like, subscribe now, and turn on the bell for more real-life emotional stories. Her name was Sophia Warren, 32 years old, ER nurse, single, tired, and the kind of woman who stayed after her shift to refill a patient's water, even when no one asked her to. That's how she met Mr. Thomas Granger. Room 414, nonverbal, cancer stage 4, no known family. The nurses whispered he used to be someone important. But now, just another terminal case with no visitors and a silent TV. Sophia noticed something different about him. He wore cufflinks, real gold, not plated. His robe, monogrammed. And even though he barely spoke, his eyes scanned people like a Wall Street executive measuring risk. The first night she checked on him, he grabbed her hand. Not out of fear, but familiarity. "I'm not your daughter," she said softly. But he didn't let go. Over the next few weeks, Sophia made time for him. She brought him books, talked about sunsets, told him stories she wasn't even sure he heard. Most nurses barely stayed 5 minutes. She stayed 40. One afternoon, a sharply dressed man showed up at the front desk, briefcase, Rolex, earpiece. Said he was handling Mr. Granger's estate. Nobody knew what that meant. But when Sophia came in that night, Mr. Granger smiled for the first time. "Thank you," he whispered. Then closed his eyes and never opened them again. She cried, quietly, alone in the break room. To her, he was never a billionaire, just a man who died with dignity. 3 days later, she was called into the hospital director's office. Waiting for her, the man with the Rolex. "Mr. Granger left you something," he said. Sophia laughed nervously. "Like a book? His robe?" The man slid over a thick envelope. Inside, a letter and a copy of a will. She read it 3 times. He had left her everything: the penthouse, the stocks, the 7-bedroom mansion in Napa Valley. Value, $1.1 billion. All because she made time when no one else did. Sophia sat in her tiny apartment, the letter trembling in her hands. The noise of her fridge's rattling hum filled the silence like it was mocking her. She had read the letter from Mr. Granger so many times the edges had started to tear. "To the only person who looked me in the eye, who made me feel human when I was dying like a stranger. I hope this changes your life as much as you changed mine. Thomas Granger." But instead of joy, Sophia felt sick. She didn't tell anyone for 2 days. How do you explain that the man you sat with on your night shifts just gave you $1 billion empire? She went back to work like nothing had happened. Room 414 was empty now. New sheets, new patient. But her heart stalled every time she passed it. Co-workers noticed something different about her. Quieter, more distracted. When Nurse Lila cracked a joke about another patient acting like he owns the hospital, Sophia flinched. Because someone did, and he gave it to her. 3 days later, the lawyer called again. "There's more," he said. She was requested to appear at a board meeting, his board. Apparently, Thomas Granger didn't just leave her assets. He left her his position, chair of Granger International Holdings. "I'm a nurse," she said, laughing in disbelief. "Mr. Granger insisted you attend. He believed you had something this company needed. The next morning, she showed up in a borrowed navy suit, hair-pinned, wearing shoes that hurt. The boardroom was all glass and chrome, cold and sharp like the men inside it. They barely glanced at her. She could see it in their eyes, the doubt, the suspicion, the buried disdain behind polite smiles. A woman in scrubs was now their boss? "Let's be clear," said a man named Patrick Colburn, chief financial officer. Gray temples, ruthless eyes. "You're not a businesswoman, you're a symbol." Sophia blinked. "A symbol of what?" "Sentiment," he replied, turning a tablet toward her. "Our PR is through the roof. People love the story. Nurse inherits fortune from dying CEO. You're trending on 6 platforms." Sophia felt her stomach turn. "I didn't ask for that." Patrick smiled, fake and thin. "That's the thing. Mr. Granger never asked either." The more she sat in on the meetings, the clearer it became. They didn't want her. They didn't see her. She was the face on a charity brochure, the pawn they'd pose with during donation ceremonies. And she hated it. But what stung more was discovering why Thomas Granger had done this. One late evening, she returned to his penthouse. Still untouched, the rooms frozen in time. A caretaker nodded and handed her a small box they found behind the study's bookcase. Inside, photographs. Dozens of her. Sophia in room 414, handing him a book, tucking in his blanket, sitting beside him, smiling with tired eyes. She stared at them for hours. He had watched her when she didn't know, captured those moments like they were treasures. And it frightened her. Not because of what it meant, but because it made her feel like none of it had been real. Was it gratitude or obsession? The next week, everything spiraled. The hospital leaked her name to the press. Paparazzi appeared outside her apartment, snapping photos of her in pajamas and slippers. Her landlord raised the rent. Strangers sent mail asking for donations. Distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. But worst of all was what happened at work. Nurse Lila stopped talking to her. Doctors treated her differently, deferential smiles mixed with envy. "She thinks she's better than us now," someone whispered in the break room. She wasn't. She didn't. But her uniform suddenly didn't protect her. And she didn't belong at the boardroom table either. Then came the offer. Patrick Colburn again. Same cold smile. "You can walk away from this," he said, sliding a contract across the desk. "We'll transfer the holdings, give you a quiet life. No press, no meetings, just money. Lots of it." Sophia stared at it. "You want me to vanish?" "We want stability." She thought about room 414, about the man who held her hand and whispered thank you. If she signed this, was she betraying him? Or was she simply surviving? She didn't sign. Not that day. She tried to stay. Attended every meeting, hired a private tutor to teach her finance, watched hours of videos about corporate governance. She even shadowed the head of operations for 3 weeks. But every suggestion she made was quietly pushed aside. Every budget she questioned was already approved. And one night, she found her own signature forged on a donation check for $2 million. She confronted Patrick. He didn't deny it. "You're overwhelmed," he said smoothly. "We're just helping, like you helped him." She stared at him, stunned. "You think that's what I did? Helped him so I could get something?" He smiled again, this time crueler. "You got everything, Sophia." She walked out of the office that night with tears streaming down her cheeks. And for the first time, she didn't know who she was. Not a nurse, not a CEO, not a woman with a home she could go back to. Just a name on a check no one thought she earned. 2 weeks later, she returned to the hospital. Not to work, just to see it. She stood outside room 414, now housing a different patient. And as she turned to leave, a young intern stopped her. "You're her, right? The nurse he left the fortune to?" Sophia nodded cautiously. The intern hesitated, then handed her a folded note. "Someone dropped this off. Said to give it to you if you ever came back." The envelope was old, yellowed, her name scrawled on the front, in Mr. Granger's shaky handwriting. Inside was a single sentence. "Don't let them reshape you, Sophia. That would be the real death." And for the first time in weeks, she smiled, not because things were okay, but because someone had seen her. Sophia folded the note carefully and tucked it into her coat pocket like a lifeline. She stepped out of the hospital doors and into the brisk evening air, unsure of where she was going, but certain of one thing. She couldn't keep living between two worlds that didn't want her. The hospital no longer felt like home, and the boardroom still felt like a trap. Every time she tried to bridge the gap, she fell deeper into a chasm of misunderstanding. And yet, she couldn't walk away either, not just because of the money, not just because of the will, but because Thomas Granger had trusted her with something that none of them understood. And deep down, she wanted to earn it, even if the cost was her peace. The next morning, Sophia returned to Granger Tower for the first time in days. A cold receptionist gave her the usual blank stare, while security cleared her with the stiffness of someone still surprised she had access. Her assistant, a young man named Mark, who always seemed nervous, greeted her with 2 coffees and a calendar packed with meetings she hadn't agreed to. "Legal wants you in on the housing fund vote," he mumbled. "Patrick says you're expected to just sign off." "Of course he does," Sophia muttered. She entered her corner office. It was clean. Too clean. Something was missing. The framed photo of her late parents, gone. The notebook she scribbled in during board meetings, missing. She checked the drawers. Empty. Then her computer. Files she had bookmarked. Ideas she was working on. All deleted. She buzzed Mark. "Did you clean my desk?" "No, ma'am," he said. "I thought someone from executive services might have—" Sophia didn't need to hear the rest. She knew exactly who did it. She stormed into Patrick Colburn's office without knocking. He was on the phone, but ended the call mid-sentence when he saw her face. "You erased my files." "Your files were unapproved proposals," he said, cool as ever. "We don't keep clutter." "You went through my office?" "I manage this company. You're the nameplate." His words landed like glass shattering on tile, sharp, unfixable. Sophia took a breath. "You know what I think, Patrick?" "That you're in over your head?" he offered, standing. "That you can't stand that he gave this to someone who didn't wear a tie and treat him like a balance sheet." He crossed his arms. He gave it to someone who had no idea who he was. Sophia stepped forward, eyes narrowing. No. He gave it to someone who knew exactly who he was. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just a lonely man who wanted to matter one more time. They stood like statues, neither willing to blink first. Then Patrick smiled. But it wasn't smug this time. It was pity. "And look what it's doing to you." That night, Sophia returned to the penthouse. She poured herself a glass of wine she couldn't pronounce and sank into the couch. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Emails, requests, news headlines. She ignored all of them. Instead, she opened the bottom drawer of the antique desk in the study, the one she hadn't touched yet. Inside, another envelope. Her name, again. Only this one was thicker. She opened it slowly, expecting more memories, but what she found was far more complicated. The letter was a draft of a will, not the final one. Dated 2 months earlier. In this version, the entire estate was split between several charities, longtime employees, and a foundation bearing Thomas Granger's name. Sophia's name wasn't listed once. She read it twice, then 3 times. So what changed? What happened in the final weeks of his life that made him rewrite everything and hand it to her? Was it gratitude? Guilt? or had someone else fallen short? She decided to visit the hospice social worker who used to stop by room 414. Her name was Ava, mid-50s, tired eyes that had seen too many goodbyes. She remembered Sophia. "You stayed late with him, more than anyone. Do you remember anything he said? Anything strange before he died?" Ava hesitated. "There was one thing," she said. "He asked for a list of every staff member who had taken care of him. He was looking for someone." "Looking for who?" Ava shrugged. "He didn't say. Just circled your name. And that was the end of it." Sophia sat back, the weight of that revelation crashing into her like cold water. She wasn't Plan A. She had been chosen because someone else, maybe everyone else, had failed to show up. The following Monday, the board voted on the housing fund. It was a $30 million project Thomas Granger had promised before his death. Low-income housing for displaced veterans. Patrick motioned to delay it. "Too risky in this economy," he said. Sophia's hand shot up. "We move forward." The room tensed. "You don't understand the financials," someone muttered. "I understand people," she said, "and I understand promises." But the vote went against her, 5-2. Afterward, one of the junior board members approached her in the hall. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just nodded and walked away. That night, Sophia finally met with Thomas's personal attorney, a quiet man named Charles, who had been with him for 20 years. "You knew about the change in the will," she said. He nodded. "I advised against it." "Why?" "Because you were the only one who cared for him as a person, not a portfolio. That's good for the soul, but not always good for the empire." Sophia was quiet. He continued. "He left you the company because he didn't trust the men around him anymore. Not after what they did with the healthcare cuts. He felt betrayed." "And you? Do you think I belong here?" Charles smiled faintly. "I think you belong anywhere you decide to stay." But as she stepped out of the building, a headline lit up on her phone. "Insiders question mental competence of late CEO. Nurse turned billionaire faces inheritance lawsuit." Below it was Patrick's face and 2 other board members, speaking at some emergency investor briefing. She kept scrolling. The story claimed Thomas Granger had suffered emotional confusion and made irrational decisions in his final weeks. It quoted anonymous sources from inside the board. Her stomach dropped. They were going to challenge the will, erase her. She walked into the penthouse and dropped her phone on the floor. Everything had felt fragile before. Now it felt deliberate. The cold boardroom stares, the deleted files, the forged signature. It had all been leading to this, and worst of all, she didn't even know if she had the fight left in her. But just before she turned in for the night, she passed the piano in the living room, one she'd never touched. A sheet of music was still open on the stand. The title, Grace, in his handwriting. She flipped the page. Underneath the final bars, a scribbled note, "For the one who didn't walk away." Sometimes the ones who give the most never expect anything in return. And sometimes they receive more than they ever imagined, not because they asked, but because they showed up when no one else did. Sophia never planned to be part of someone's legacy. She just wanted to do her job with heart. But now she's caught in a world that measures value in numbers, while she still believes in something deeper. And maybe that's what makes her dangerous. Or maybe that's exactly what makes her right. If this story moved you, comment where you're watching from and answer the quiz at the end. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. And if you love this kind of emotional story, the next one is already waiting for you. Click the video that will show on your screen soon. We'll meet you there. Quiz. How many times did we say the name Sophia Warren?